こんにちは、ハリケーンフットボールです。今回の教材は、サッカー日本代表に関する動画です。サムライブルーは、ワールドカップの壮行試合として、アイスランドと対戦し、1対0で勝利しました。今回の動画では、2026年、ワールドカップにおけるダークホースについて話している動画ですが、ここでは、ダークホースとは何かという定義から始め、その候補として、日本、セネガル、コロンビア、エクアドル、ノルウェーの5カ国が挙げられています。ダークホースになる条件として、最低限の実力、ワールドクラスの選手、強固な守備、開催国効果、そしてトーナメントの組み合わせが重要だと説明し、実際のトーナメント表で、どこまで勝ち上がるのかという話までしています。ダークホースについてここまで詳しく話しているものも珍しいと思いますので、実際に日本がどこまで勝ち進めると話しているのか、チェックしてみましょ
う。Not all, but almost every single World Cup has a dark horse. And what's a dark horse? It's an unexpected team, an underdog that makes a deep run or even wins a trophy. Now, mind you, in the World Cup, in all of World Cup history, we have never had a dark horse actually win it, unlike the Euros where like Greece won in 2004. Most recently in 2022, we had Morocco reach the semifinals. They were the dark horse of that edition. Back in 2014, we had Costa Rica make it to the quarterfinals. They were the dark horse of the 2014 World Cup. In 2018, Croatia made it to the final. They were the dark horse of that edition. And in 2002, with the help of the refs, South Korea was the dark horse where they made it to the semifinals. And one can even argue that in 2002, we had two dark horses, South Korea and Turkey, because Turkey also made it to the semifinals. With that said, which national team will be the dark horse of the 2026 World Cup? Hello. If you're new here, I'm Filippo, and welcome to Chapéu Football, where we provide the best coverage of South American football in English on YouTube. And today, we have a World Cup video. I want to go through the facts, the data, and my own personal opinion to try to predict which national team will be the dark horse of the 2026 World Cup. And in Portuguese, a dark horse would just be what we call an azarão, right? A team that's not expected to go far, but they manage to do so. And for this video, first, I'm going to start by going through the metrics that I look towards when I'm trying to predict who could be the dark horse. After that, we're going to establish 4 or 5 teams that are strong dark horse candidates. And last but not least, we're going to go through the bracket to see if it's realistic or not for any of these teams to make it far and how far. Got it? Metrics, 4 to 5 teams, bracket. And what you can do right now is drop a like in this video if you haven't already, and let us know in the comment section down below which national team will be the dark horse of the 2026 World Cup and how far will they go. Before you answer that, you're probably going to want to see the bracket and my whole analysis, but if you have already done yours, let us know in the comment section down below while you're dropping a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on all of our World Cup coverage. Okay, let's roll the intro and start the episode. First and foremost, what are the metrics that I look into when trying to predict a dark horse? I mean, the first thing you have to look into is the team needs to have a bare minimum quality. Obviously, you can't go on and say Argentina is going to be a dark horse, right? That is a title contender. But saying a team like Saudi Arabia will be a dark horse is just silly, right? They just don't have the quality to go that far in the World Cup. In the last World Cup, they pulled a major upset defeating Argentina, for example, but they couldn't even get out of their group. So when trying to predict a dark horse, you have to be realistic. The first thing you have to look at, that team needs to have the bare minimum quality to be able to pull 1, 2, or maybe 3 upsets to go far in the World Cup. Because one accidental upset just won't cut it. The second thing that I look into is, along with having the bare minimum quality, that team needs to have at least one world-class player, right? And you may be saying, did previous teams have that? Yes, if you go to Morocco in 2022, Hakimi is a world-class player. They had Hakimi. Now, if you go to 2018 Croatia, they had Modric. That's one of the best players we have ever seen in history, right? That's a world-class player. 2014 Costa Rica, you're going to say, they didn't have a world-class player. Yes, they did. They had Keylor Navas, the goalkeeper, a world-class goalkeeper, an incredible goalkeeper. So you do need to have a good supporting cast, but you need at least that one world-class player that can pull you through when you need it, when things get tough, when things get tight. So far, bare minimum quality, a good supporting cast, and one world-class player. The other metric that I look into is defense. If you are an underdog, you're going to be defending a lot. If you're a dark horse, you need a strong defense. I have never seen a dark horse make a deep run in a World Cup with a bad defense. It just can't happen. You need to have a good, solid defense, a good goalkeeper, good back line, because to pull an upset, you're going to have to defeat a superior team. When you face a superior team, you have to defend well because they're going to have most of the ball. They're going to be more dominant. We saw that with Morocco in 2022. There were many games where it looked like they were being defeated or being outplayed, which honestly they were, but they had a world-class goalkeeper. Bono's incredible, great defense, and they found a way to pull through. So if you don't have a strong defense, you will not be a dark horse. Now, another thing I try to look into, but it's not that relevant these days, is the host nation effect. Usually host nations, they overachieve. Now, does that mean I'm going to pick Mexico, USA, or Canada to be the dark horses? Probably not, but being the host nation does play a role because besides Qatar and South Africa, usually host nations overachieve. Last but not least, what I look into, the bracket. The bracket is incredibly important because sometimes this team is better than that team, but this team that is weaker makes a deeper run because the bracket was simply easier. So everything I said matters, but the bracket ultimately is the most important one. With that said, based on the metrics that I just mentioned, which are the teams that are the candidates to be the dark horses? Before we go through the bracket and pick the one favorite to be the one that's going to make a deep run, let's go through the options. Team number one, or option number one, Japan. And hopefully this team does unlock blue lock mode. But let me talk about Japan. Very solid defense, a coach that knows the tournament, a very talented and technical squad. They also beat Germany and Spain in the last World Cup, so they proved they can pull an upset. I personally think this team is better than the one we saw in 2022, and they showed us they can pull multiple upsets in one World Cup. They're also due to have a deep run soon or in the future. I think within the next 3 or 4 World Cups, we're going to see Japan make it to the quarterfinals or possibly even the semifinals. Now, they will be missing Mitoma. That is a key player for them, an incredible player that plays for Brighton in the Premier League, but they do have depth. I'm honestly not that concerned. My biggest concerns for Japan are actually two of them. One, I still want to look at their bracket, which we're going to do very soon in this video. I haven't done that. And two, Japan is just very good everywhere on the field, from goalkeeper to center forward. But if you look at their roster, it's just many, many great or elite players. They do not have that one world-class player. And I think that's something that's still missing in Japanese football. So many good players, so much talent, so much depth. They need that one superstar. And you maybe say, Mitoma is incredible. It's a level above Mitoma. That's the one thing I think they're missing. And what you're missing right now is dropping a like in this video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so. Knockout round. Okay, so we've established Japan, Senegal, Colombia, Ecuador, and Norway as the 5 candidates to make a deep run in this World Cup despite not being title contenders. Now let's go through their bracket, because then we'll be able to determine which one of these 5 is more likely to be the dark horse. But before we do that, don't forget to drop a like in this video and subscribe to the channel right now. Just do it right now. I'm waiting. Do it. Okay, so just so you know, what I did for our first simulation was I went through every group and I put the most likely scenario. So as you can see, Group B, I had Ecuador finishing in second behind Germany. I had Japan finishing in first, but we're going to put both scenarios there. I'm going to have Japan for this first bracket finishing in first, Netherlands in second, but then I'll switch it to see what happens with Japan if they finish in second. The other team that we had as a dark horse, Senegal and Norway. For this scenario, I think it's more likely that Senegal finishes in second, and then Norway is in third, but they'll advance as well. And then the last one that we have is Colombia. Now, I had Colombia advancing in first here, Portugal in second. I think these two teams are much closer than people think. Ultimately, what I think will happen is that Colombia will finish first on goal differential. The only way Portugal tops this group is if they defeat Colombia, and I had them tying in the last game. I say that because Colombia is more likely to, score more goals against Congo and Uzbekistan, because Portugal has a much more pragmatic style of play. Okay, when it comes to knockout rounds, I think Portugal will be the slight favorites, but it just comes down to goal differential here because I think it will end in a draw. But again, we're going to also simulate with Colombia finishing in second. So let's go to the bracket, okay, because this is very important when determining a dark horse. The first one we can look into right away is Japan. So if Japan finishes in first, they will very likely play Morocco in the second round. or the first knockout. And this is interesting because I put Morocco qualifying second behind Brazil. So that means if Japan doesn't get Morocco, it could be Scotland, sure. But very likely, if Japan finishes first, they're going to play Morocco or Brazil. Morocco is the current semifinalist, and Brazil is Brazil, right? So right away, Japan would need to pull an upset right away, okay? And let's say they do pull an upset. The next round, they would play the Czech Republic or Bosnia. So that means they'll be playing someone from Mexico's group or Canada's group. To be honest, the best team out of Group A and B, which would be Mexico and Canada's group, is Switzerland. Can Japan beat Switzerland? Yes, I think they can. I would actually maybe even put Japan as the favorites or 50-50. But let's say Bosnia advance here. Eventually, Japan would have to play Germany or France. So for Japan to make it to the semifinals while qualifying in first, they would have to knock out Morocco, at worst a Switzerland, and then France. My issue here is that I don't think Japan matches up well against France. Okay, I think they can pull a win against Morocco, Bosnia, Switzerland. My issue is France. Can they defeat Germany? Of course, but I don't think Germany will defeat France. And unless France doesn't go through in first, then it would be Senegal and Norway. Japan making it to the semifinals is very unlikely. But Japan making it to the quarterfinals is very likely. Would that qualify as a dark horse? Maybe. It kind of depends on how other teams do. But that's the scenario for Japan in case Japan finishes in first. Now we would have to go to the other side of the bracket to check on the other teams here. So let's start with Ecuador and Senegal. Okay. So I had Ecuador advancing in second, and I had Senegal advancing in second. And these two teams would face each other right away, which means one of the dark horses would advance. In this case, it doesn't really matter if I advance Ecuador or Senegal. You guys are looking into the scenario of both teams. Let's just put Ecuador for the sake of this video. So let's say Ecuador advance, even though, like I said, Ecuador, Senegal, same simulation. They would play Brazil or Netherlands. Let's say Brazil advances. I think Brazil would be the slight favorites against the Netherlands. They would have a very tough matchup in the round 32 already against another dark horse candidate. And if it's not Senegal for Ecuador, it would have been Norway. That's another dark horse candidate. And then on the other side here, technically England would be the one. So let's say Ecuador or Senegal knock out Brazil. They would then have to knock out England to make it to the semifinals. That is two teams that are giants, in my opinion, title contenders. I think England's a title contender under Thomas Tuchel. Brazil is a title contender under Carlo Ancelotti. Senegal and Ecuador, it's not looking good because of the bracket, right? Could they pull it off? Yes, I can see them knocking out Brazil, but can they do it 2 games in a row? Can they knock out Brazil after a very tough game and then go play England and knock out England? Now, you are going to say Morocco kind of did that, right? They did that in 2022. It's a little bit different, right? I know Brazil is struggling, but I think Brazil will figure it out during the World Cup with Ancelotti. And England is a title contender. They have a very good team. I know that defense can be shaky at times, but they have Tuchel. That is a cup coach. Morocco knocked out a shaky Spain. Like, Spain wasn't doing that well in the World Cup. They lost to Japan. Japan beat Spain in the last World Cup in the group stage. And then Morocco defeated Portugal. That was also not playing well during the World Cup. Now, we don't know how Brazil and England are going to be during the World Cup, but I think they'll be fine. I don't like the odds of Senegal and Ecuador if they finish second in their group because of these matchups, right? They can face Brazil and Netherlands right away. And then after that, you have to face England. I think, like Japan, if they finish first, they have a better bracket because ultimately the only upset for Japan would have been France. Now, mind you, I do not like Japan's odds when it comes to playing France. So Japan will very likely lose in the round of in the quarterfinals if they do very well. Now, Ecuador and Senegal, round of 16 and quarterfinals is tough, man. Now let's go to the other. Now let me go back here. Let's change the groups a little bit because let's be fair. And when we change the groups, let's go to this one here. Let's say Ecuador somehow finishes first in this group. It's not the most likely scenario. We already did the most likely scenario. But it is possible. Okay, it's possible. And let's say Japan loses to the Dutch in the first game, and Japan finishes in second. Okay, so now we're changing the scenarios. We're putting the second most likely scenario. Ecuador tops the group. Netherlands finishes in first. That was the only one. So let's see who else we got here. So now Japan finishing in second. Oh boy, look at this. If Japan finishes in second place, they very likely play Brazil. If they knock out Brazil, they play Germany or Norway. There's Norway, the dark horse candidate, right? Let's say Germany knocks out Norway. Japan has to play then Germany, and then Japan would end up playing England. So if Japan finishes in second, it just becomes a whole lot tougher for them. Now, they in this scenario that we have here, they would have to knock out 3 giants: Brazil, Germany, and England.
次は解説です。今回は比較的簡単なものが多いと思いますが、便利なものも多いと思いますので、本日の解説をチェックしてみましょ
う。Underdog that makes a deep run or even wins a trophy.
メイカディープルーンはスポーツで非常によく使われる表現です。直訳すると、深いところまで進むですが、実際には大会で上位まで勝ち進む、快進撃するという意味になります。ワールドカップやチャンピオンズリーグなどのトーナメントでよく登場します。特に下馬評の高くないチームがベスト8やベスト4まで進んだ時によく使われます。ランは走るだけでなく、連勝や躍進という意味もあります。スポーツ英語を学ぶなら覚えておきたい重要表現です。
Underdog that makes a deep run or even wins a trophy. Underdog that makes a deep run or even wins a trophy. They pulled a major upset defeating Argentina, for example.
プラナプセットは、スポーツで番狂わせを起こすという意味の表現です。格下と見られていたチームが、格上のチームに勝った時によく使われます。ここでのプルは、引っ張るではなく、やってのけるという意味です。この後に解説する表現でも、プルのイメージは、引き寄せる、手繰り寄せるようなイメージを持つとわかりやすいと思います。アップセットは動揺させるだけでなく、名詞で番狂わせという意味もあります。サッカー解説やスポーツニュースでよく出る表現です。
They pulled a major upset defeating Argentina, for example. They pulled a major upset defeating Argentina, for example, because one accidental upset just won't cut it.
カティットは、基準を満たす、通用するという意味の口語表現です。特に won't cut it の形で、それでは足りない、それでは通用しないという意味になります。カットを切ると考えるとわかりにくいですが、ここでは基準を満たすと同義だと覚えると良いでしょう。スポーツでは、選手やチームがあるレベルで通用するかを表すときによく使われ、日常会話や仕事でも説明、努力、結果が不十分なときに使えます。かなりネイティブらしい便利な表現です。
Because one accidental upset just won't cut it. Because one accidental upset just won't cut it. One world-class player that can pull you through when you need.
フルスルーは、困難を乗り越える、危機を脱するという意味の駆動詞です。スポーツでは、チームが苦しい状況に陥った時に、それを救う選手やプレーについて使われます。例えば、決勝ゴールを決めてチームを勝利へ導いた場合にも使えます。また、病気や怪我から回復するという意味でも使われる便利な表現です。英語圏のスポーツ解説では、ワールドクラスの選手が試合を決める場面で頻繁に登場します。特にプルデティームスルーやプルデムスルーの形を覚えておくと理解しやすくなります。
One world-class player that can pull you through when you need. One world-class player that can pull you through when you need. Probably not, but being the host nation does play a role.
プレアロールは役割を果たすや影響するという意味の非常に重要な表現です。もともとは演劇で役を演じることを意味していましたが、現在では物事の原因や要因を説明するときによく使われます。スポーツでは、経験、戦術、運、組み合わせなどが試合結果に影響する場面で頻繁に登場します。例えばラクプレアロールといえば、運が影響したという意味になります。トイックやニュース記事でも非常によく見かけるため、ぜひ覚えておきたい表現です。
Probably not, but being the host nation does play a role. Probably not, but being the host nation does play a role. Could they pull it off?
ターフは難しいことをやってのけるという意味の駆動詞です。普通なら成功しにくいことを実際に成功させた時に使います。サッカーでは格下チームが格上に勝った時や難しい勝利を収めた時によく使われます。例えばプロファナップセットは番狂わせをやってのけるという意味です。カンゼプロテトフは彼らはそれを実現できるのかという非常に自然な表現です。日常会話でも仕事やイベント、計画を成功させた時に使えます。スポーツ解説でよく出る便利な表現です。
Could they pull it off? Could they pull it off?
いかがでしたか？日本は誰が見てもダークホースとして扱われているのは間違いありませんが、実際にダークホースの条件を満たしているということを具体的に説明していたのではないでしょうか。唯一足りないものが、やはりワールドクラスの選手でしたし、三笘薫のさらにもう一つ上のレベルということでした。そういう意味では、久保建英も、鈴木彩音も、今後は佐野海舟も、そのワールドクラスの選手になっていける可能性が十分にあると感じるものの、現時点では、もう一歩だという感覚は、日本のファンも感じていることでしょう。しかしそれ以外の条件は全て満たし、実績も十分なほどに出ていますし、この動画でも、トーナメントの天井と表現しているブラジルやイングランドにも、日本が勝っている事実もありますが、一方で、やはり公式戦で、こういうワールドカップの舞台で倒すことが、まだ必要だとも思わせられますので、優勝するためにも、見たことがない景色までたどり着くためにも、この大会で2つや3つのアップセットと言われる勝利が必須であり、それが見れることを期待して、楽しみにしたいと思います。本日もご視聴いただきありがとうございました。またすぐにお会いしましょう。